That's the fats we have to put up with." Those were the exact words my own daughter, Jasmine, shouted at her wedding, pointing at me in front of her new husband's wealthy family. The Grand Metropolitan Ballroom in Charlotte, North Carolina, erupted with cruel laughter as 200 guests stared at me in disgust, as if I were some stray creature that had stumbled into the most elegant event of the year. My cheeks burned. My hands trembled around the small gift I had wrapped so carefully. Then something happened that changed everything. Mr. Sterling, the groom's father, a distinguished man in a sharp, custom suit, had been laughing with the rest, but suddenly he froze, his eyes fixed on my face, his expression twisting into shock. "Wait," he murmured, stepping toward me as the room kept sneering. "Aren't you my new boss? My name is Eleanor Baines, though most people call me Ellie. I'm 66 years old, and for the past 30 years, I've lived like a ghost. After my husband died in an accident when Jasmine was 12, I became that invisible woman everyone overlooks. The one who cleans offices before dawn, takes 3 different buses to get to work, buys clothes from Goodwill, and counts every penny before spending it. Jasmine grew up ashamed of me, ashamed of my job, my rough hands that smelled of disinfectant, my worn-out shoes squeaking across the polished granite floors of corporate towers. What she never knew, what no one imagined, was that while I scrubbed those offices, I was listening. I listened to the executives working late, to their business plans, failures, and secrets. For years, I absorbed knowledge like a sponge. With the few dollars I managed to save, starting with 50 from a stock tip I overheard, then 100 more, I began to invest. My small apartment filled with used finance books and discarded newspapers. Every night after work I studied, eyes burning with fatigue, heart pounding with determination. While Jasmine saw me as a failure, I was quietly building an empire. My investments grew. I bought properties through holding companies, purchased shares in struggling firms that later flourished, and became a silent partner in deals that exceeded all expectations. For 2 decades I lived simply. Cheap clothes, plain meals, the same quiet routine. But my bank balance soared beyond imagination. And now, at my daughter's wedding, Mr. Sterling recognized me. He was the very man whose company I had purchased 2 weeks earlier for $45 million. The man who had signed the sale contract without realizing that the mysterious buyer, E.J. Beaumont, was the same woman his new in-laws had just humiliated. I saw the moment it clicked, the recognition in his eyes as he remembered my face from video calls, my signature on contracts, my voice during negotiations. A hush spread through the ballroom, rippling outward like water. Guests turned to look, sensing the shift. Jasmine, who had been laughing moments earlier, went pale. Her smirk disappeared as she saw her father-in-law staring at me in disbelief. "Ma'am," Mr. Sterling whispered. Is that you?" His hands shook as he pulled out his phone, scrolling frantically through his emails, searching for proof. The woman he had just ridiculed, the one his son had married into, was the same person who now controlled his company and his family's financial fate. And I, Ellie, the invisible one, the fat S, stood there holding my small gift wrapped in cheap paper, knowing my life was about to change forever. After decades of silence, my moment had finally come. I watched as recognition spread across Mr. Sterling's face. His fingers trembled as he opened the corporate profile of E.J. Beaumont, comparing it to the woman standing before him in a $30 wine-colored dress. "My God," he whispered. The words sliced through the air. "You're the one who bought Sterling Corporation." Jasmine rushed over, her heels clattering on the marble. "What are you talking about, Mr. Sterling?" she said with her practiced sweet tone. "This is my mother Eleanor, the one I told you about, who cleans offices." She gave a nervous laugh, but her eyes flicked between us, searching for answers. My heart pounded. For 20 years I had guarded my secret like buried gold. Every night after scrubbing floors, I'd sit at my small desk managing million-dollar transactions. I had 3 phones, one personal, one for business, and one for emergencies. I'd built a network of shell companies and offshore accounts that no accountant could trace. Mr. Sterling's company had been drowning in debt, $3 million in losses, lawsuits, and broken contracts. When my legal team presented the deal, I didn't just see red ink. I saw lives, hundreds of workers and families who didn't deserve to suffer. I paid $45 million not for profit, but for people. "Mr. Sterling, you're scaring me," Jasmine said, her voice breaking. "What does my mother have to do with your company?" Devon, her new husband, stepped beside her nervously. Mr. Sterling looked straight at me. For the first time, I saw respect in his eyes. "Miss Beaumont," he said quietly, using my corporate name. "Thank you for saving my family's company. Without you, hundreds would have lost their jobs this week." The ballroom fell silent. Jasmine stood frozen, her mouth open as his words sank in. "Miss Beaumont," she repeated slowly. "My mother is Baines." Her voice rose, trembling, as the crowd closed in around us. I still didn't speak. For years I had perfected the art of silence, of being invisible, of letting others fill the empty spaces with their own assumptions. But now, every second of my silence was like acid, dripping onto the perfect image Jasmine had built for her wedding. I could see her mind racing, remembering every cruel word, every time she had mocked my poverty, lied to her friends about my job, or pretended I didn't exist. "Mom," she finally whispered, the words sounding strange after the public humiliation just minutes before. "Is what Mr. Sterling said true?" Her eyes shimmered with confusion, hope, and something more dangerous. Greed. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, calculating what this might mean for her future. The guests murmured like restless bees. I caught fragments of their whispers. "She's a millionaire? Jasmine's mother? That can't be right. She always looked so poor." The irony was sharp and bitter. The same people who had laughed at me 20 minutes ago now looked at me with forced respect and curiosity. Mr. Sterling stepped forward, his hand extended, a gesture that stood in stark contrast to the humiliation he had just witnessed. "Allow me to introduce you properly to my family," he said solemnly. "This is Eleanor Baines, the businesswoman who just saved my company and the jobs of 600 people." It was my moment. After decades of hiding behind corporate names and legal representatives, after years of being treated as less than nothing, even by my own daughter, I finally had the chance to speak. But the words that left my mouth weren't the ones Jasmine expected. "Mr. Sterling," I said softly but clearly, "I appreciate your words, but I believe there's a misunderstanding." The hope in Jasmine's eyes flickered into relief, convinced I was about to deny everything. "I didn't buy your company to be recognized or thanked," I continued. "I did it because it was the right thing to do." I paused, locking eyes with my daughter. It's something I learned after seeing too much unnecessary suffering in this world. Jasmine blinked, confused. I hadn't confirmed or denied anything, but I had planted a seed of doubt, one that would grow and torment her. I could see it already. Her mind caught between shame and suspicion, between guilt and greed. And I, Ellie the Invisible, smiled for the first time that night. The game had just begun. The doubt burned in Jasmine's eyes. In the days after the wedding, she wouldn't stop calling me. First came the sweet messages pretending concern. "Mommy, are you okay? You looked nervous at the wedding." Then, the probing questions. "Did you know Mr. Sterling before?" And finally, desperation. "I need you to tell me the truth about what he said." I went on with my routine as if nothing had changed. Every morning at 5, I woke up in my small 2-bedroom apartment, drank black coffee, ate toast, put on my cleaning uniform, and caught 3 buses to work. What Jasmine didn't know was that, during those rides, I was on my corporate phone managing a $200 million operation, spread across investments throughout the continent. On Tuesday night, she showed up unannounced. I heard her fumbling with the old lock downstairs, cursing under her breath. When she finally reached my door, she was wrapped in an ivory cashmere coat that cost more than 6 months of my rent. Her Italian shoes looked absurd against the worn linoleum floors and peeling hallway paint. "Mom, we have to talk," she said, dropping onto my thrift store sofa, her nose wrinkling. "I can't stop thinking about what happened at the wedding. Mr. Sterling seemed different with you, like he respected you." I poured myself a cup of tea and sat in my favorite chair, the one I'd rescued from the street 15 years ago and reupholstered with cheap fabric. "Your wedding was beautiful. Jasmine, Devin seems like a good man." My tone was calm, though a storm raged inside me. It was the first time she had come to my home in years, and only because she thought I might have money. "Don't change the subject!" she snapped, springing to her feet. "Mr. Sterling said you're Beaumont, that you bought his company for millions. Is it true or not?" Her voice cracked at the end, betraying the desperation she'd been holding in. I took a slow sip of tea, letting the warmth settle in my chest. "Jasmine," I said gently, "do you really believe that I, who cleans offices for a living, who wears discount clothes, who lives in this tiny apartment, could be a millionaire?" I stood and held out my rough palms, hands worn from decades of labor. "Do these look like the hands of a CEO?" But I saw something dangerous flicker in her eyes, a spark of suspicion that refused to die. "Then explain," she demanded. "Why did Mr. Sterling call you Miss Beaumont? Why did he look at you like you were important?" It was time to give her exactly what she needed, enough to drive herself mad. "Perhaps," I said slowly, "Mr. Sterling mistook me for someone else. Or maybe," I paused deliberately, "maybe I reminded him of someone from his past. Men his age sometimes see ghosts where there are none." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Jasmine, with her paranoid mind and greedy heart, filled the silence with her own conclusions. I watched her calculate, speculate, imagine. "What if he wasn't mistaken?" she whispered to herself. "What if you really have money hidden somewhere?" In the days that followed, she turned into an amateur detective. She began dropping by unannounced, rummaging through drawers when she thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I caught her at my desk while I was making dinner. "I was just looking for a pen," she lied, but I knew she had been searching through my papers. What she didn't know was that all my important documents were locked away in a safety deposit box at the city's most exclusive bank. My apartment contained nothing but what it appeared to: utility bills, grocery receipts, old magazines, and borrowed library books. But I had left a few things behind on purpose. A deposit slip for $300 that looked suspiciously altered. A scribbled phone number that belonged to a pizza place but looked corporate if you didn't check. On Friday, Jasmine returned, this time with Devin. It was the first time my son-in-law had stepped into my home, and I could see the discomfort on his face as he searched for a clean place to sit. He was a kind young man, raised in comfort, but without his wife's cruelty. "Ms. Baines," he said politely, in the practiced tone of someone taught good manners. "Jasmine told me about the confusion at our wedding. My father has been very anxious ever since. He kept insisting that I looked familiar to him in some professional way." Jasmine sat on the edge of my sofa, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for hidden evidence. "Devin thinks we should clear up this misunderstanding," she said, though her tone made it clear she wanted anything but clarity. She didn't want answers. She wanted confirmation. "What kind of clarification?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Inside, though, I felt like I was playing chess with a grandmaster, every move deliberate and strategic. Devon cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Well, my father mentioned that the company was bought by a woman named E.J. Beaumont. We thought maybe you knew this person, or... He hesitated. Maybe there's some family connection we don't know about. Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes glowing with anticipation. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the question she had rehearsed over and over. But my answer only deepened her confusion. Baines is a very common name, I said simply. If Mr. Sterling really wants to meet the person who bought his company, I'm sure he can contact his lawyers to arrange it. I smiled faintly, though I don't see why he'd want to personally thank someone for a business transaction. Jasmine jumped to her feet. Because she saved hundreds of jobs. Because she paid more than the company was worth. It wasn't just business. It was generosity. Her words betrayed her. She had been investigating, prying for information, likely pressuring Devon for financial details about his family. And with that, she revealed that she already knew far more than she'd admitted. She had been piecing together the puzzle bit by bit, and all she needed now was my confirmation to complete it. But I had no intention of giving it to her. I sat back in my worn chair, sipping my cheap tea, wearing the serene expression of a woman with nothing to hide. For the first time since the wedding, I saw real fear in her eyes. Fear of being wrong, but also fear of being right. That fear soon turned to obsession. Over the next few weeks, Jasmine's visits became more frequent and invasive. She arrived at all hours, sometimes with Devon, sometimes alone, each time armed with new questions disguised as casual conversation. Mom, have you ever thought about moving somewhere nicer? Wouldn't you rather have a car than take the bus? Her eyes scanned my apartment like a radar, searching for anything that didn't fit her image of lifelong poverty. One rainy Wednesday afternoon, I came home from work to find her sitting on the steps outside my building. She had been waiting for 3 hours in the cold, her designer coat soaked, her makeup streaked. I need the truth, she said, her voice breaking as I approached. Devon thinks I'm losing my mind. His family looks at me like I'm crazy. But I know something's off, Mom. I can feel it. I led her upstairs, made her tea, and watched her tremble on the sofa. For the first time in years, she looked truly vulnerable. Not manipulative, not calculating. Just lost. Tell me what's been on your mind, I said gently, sitting across from her as I used to when she was a frightened little girl. I've been investigating, she whispered, staring into her cup. I hired a private investigator to find out who E.J. Beaumont really is. My heart skipped, but my face remained composed. And what did he find? I asked. Nothing, she said bitterly. It's like Beaumont doesn't exist. She has companies in 12 different countries, but no photos, no interviews, no public appearances. Her lawyers handle everything through intermediaries. The detective said in 30 years he's never seen anyone so private. I leaned forward slightly. And that makes you suspicious of me? Jasmine looked up, her eyes red from crying. Mom, you used to clean those corporate offices at night. You were there when the executives worked late, when they made their calls, when they left documents on their desks. Didn't you ever learn anything you could have used? It was a clever question, too close to the truth for comfort. Jasmine, I said softly, if I had learned any corporate secrets while cleaning offices, don't you think I'd have improved my life a long time ago? Don't you think we would have lived better when you were a child? But she shook her head, desperate. Maybe you didn't want anyone to know. Maybe it was safer to live poor, while secretly building wealth. Her voice cracked, trembling with frustration. Mr. Sterling keeps asking about you. He says your face is familiar from important video calls. Devon's starting to ask questions, too. I stood and walked to the kitchen, needing a moment to think. She had hired a professional detective and still couldn't find the connection between me and E.J. Beaumont. My precautions had worked, but it also meant she wouldn't stop until she found something. When I returned with fresh tea, she was standing by my bookshelf, running her fingers over the worn spines of old finance books. "Why do you have all these books about investments?" she asked, holding up a market analysis guide I'd bought for $1 at a garage sale. "Since when are you interested in finance?" Her tone was sharp, accusatory. "I buy them because they're cheap and I like to read," I said calmly. After all those years hearing business talk while cleaning, I got curious about how companies actually work. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. Jasmine set the book down, her eyes glistening. "Mom, if you have money, any money, please tell me. Devin and I are in trouble." It was the first time she had mentioned their financial problems. I saw my opening. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, sounding concerned. She sighed heavily, collapsing onto the sofa. "Mr. Sterling's company was in worse shape than anyone told us before the wedding. Even after the sale, there are huge debts. The house is mortgaged. The cars and jewelry are all on credit. We thought the company would keep bringing in money, but—" She trailed off, her mask finally slipping. And there it was, the confession I had been waiting for. "How much do you owe?" I asked quietly. Jasmine covered her face with her hands. $200,000 on credit cards, $300 on the mortgage, another $100 in personal loans. She took a shuddering breath. "And that's not even counting the wedding. We put all of it on credit thinking we'd pay it off later. $600,000, a sum that meant nothing to me. But to her it was ruin. And what do you plan to do?" I asked, though I already knew where this was going. "Mr. Sterling is trying to find another job. But at his age, it's hard. Devin's looking too, but all his experience is tied to the family business and She hesitated, biting her lower lip the same way she used to when she was a child caught in a lie. "I thought maybe, if you really have money hidden somewhere, you could help us. Not as a gift, but as a loan. We'd pay you back, with interest." It was the moment I'd been waiting for. Jasmine had finally shown her hand. Desperation had stripped away her pride. But instead of confirming or denying what she believed, I decided to give her something far more dangerous. Hope tangled with uncertainty. "Jasmine," I said slowly, "if I had that kind of money, do you really think you'd be here begging me after calling me a fat, useless woman in front of 200 people? My tone was calm, but my words landed like blows. "Do you really think someone with money would have endured years of your contempt without saying a word?" Jasmine's composure broke. She began to cry, real tears, a mix of guilt and fear. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I treated you that way. But right now, you're the only person I can trust. If you have anything at all, you can lend us. I swear we'll pay it back every cent." I sat beside her and took her trembling hands. "Let me ask you something, Jasmine. If I really were rich, if I were this Beaumont everyone keeps talking about, what would you do? How would that change your life?" Her eyes flickered with something dangerous. Part relief, part greed. "It would mean we could save our house, our marriage, our future. It would mean I wouldn't have to live in fear of losing everything." She paused. "But it would also mean I've been a terrible daughter, despising the only person who ever loved me." It was a beautiful answer. Too beautiful. Jasmine had always known how to say the right thing, but I wanted to see what she'd do when she faced the truth. When I didn't respond, her tears dried quickly. She straightened, her face hardening into calculation. "Mom," she said sharply, "I need you to answer me directly. Are you E.J. Beaumont or not?" I rose and walked to the window overlooking the cracked street below. "Imagine, Jasmine, just imagine that the answer was yes. That while you were ashamed of me all those years, I was quietly building a multi-million-dollar empire." I turned toward her. "What would that make you?" Her face went pale. "It would make me a monster," she whispered. "It would mean I hated the only person who sacrificed everything for me." Then suddenly, her expression hardened. "But it would also mean you lied to me for decades. You let me believe I was better than you when I wasn't." There she was again. The real Jasmine, always finding a way to turn guilt into grievance. You'd prefer I was truly poor? I asked softly. Would it make you feel better to know your cruelty actually hurt someone who had no power to fight back? She said nothing, caught in the web of her own logic. Finally, she spoke in a small voice. I just want to understand why Mr. Sterling recognized you. I just want to know if there's any way we can fix this. Get out of this mess. It was time to move the game forward. I went to my room and came back carrying an old shoebox. Setting it on the coffee table, I said, "There's something I've never shown you." Inside were old documents, photos, and papers I'd prepared for this exact moment. I took out a 15-year-old photograph of me, standing in front of a sleek corporate building. My clothes were plain, but the glass tower behind me gleamed with wealth. "A coworker took this," I said smoothly. "That day I was cleaning offices at Beaumont International." Jasmine's eyes locked on the building's name in the photo. "Beaumont," she murmured, her hands trembling. "You worked for a Beaumont company." I nodded and pulled out another piece of paper, a 12-year-old pay stub for cleaning services. The employer's name had been carefully altered to read Beaumont Enterprises. "I worked for them for years," I said, pausing just long enough to build tension, "until I had to quit for personal reasons." "Personal reasons?" she whispered. "What kind of personal reasons make you leave a stable job?" This was the delicate part. The seed had to be believable, but not reveal too much. "There were irregularities in the company," I said quietly. "Things I saw late at night while cleaning. Conversations I overheard." I sat down, feigning the weight of old memories. "One night, the CEO asked me to stay after hours, for a private meeting." Jasmine's eyes widened. "He asked you to witness something?" "Exactly as I'd hoped." "I can't talk about it," I said, lowering my gaze. "I signed a non-disclosure agreement. Let's just say there are reasons someone might want to keep my identity a secret." I put the papers back in the box, and Jasmine's eyes followed every movement like a hawk. "Mom," she whispered urgently, "are you saying you know a secret about E.J. Beaumont? That you worked directly for her?" Her breath quickened. "Is that why Mr. Sterling recognized you? Because you were in important meetings?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Silence was far more powerful. I watched as she built her own story, one where I had been a hidden witness, perhaps even compensated for my silence. A story entirely wrong, but plausible enough to believe. "Do you have money from that time?" she asked finally, her voice trembling.